The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Assembly was a testament to stability. For centuries, its powerful members had guided the galaxy with a firm, paternalistic hand, pruning away any species that grew too fast, too ambitious, too different. Humanity was growing too fast. The vote was called. The verdict was exile. But what if the stability they cherished was a fragile illusion? What if the species they cast out was the only thing holding their crumbling empire together? And what do you do when the children you sent to their room are the only ones who can save you from the monsters in the dark? Humans leave quietly, and the council instantly realizes its mistake. Before we begin, take a moment to subscribe and like the video. You are the reason we explore these stories. All right, let's begin the story. The Grand Chamber of the Galactic Assembly buzzed with the dispassionate voices of 200 different species. Light from the system's 3 suns streamed through the massive crystal dome above, a silent, eternal testament to an order that had not been seriously challenged in millennia. At the center of the room, a circular table of polished, living wood stretched nearly 50 meters across. The most powerful beings in the galaxy sat around it, each representing their ancient, star-spanning civilizations. Ambassador Eris Thorn of Earth sat quietly at his designated seat. Unlike the other delegates, who wore elaborate, shimmering robes or ceremonial, jewel-encrusted armor, he was dressed in a simple, dark blue diplomatic suit. It was a statement, a quiet declaration that humanity, a member for a mere 75 years, did not belong to this club of ancient aristocrats. His eyes, tired from 3 days of relentless, circular debate, were focused on High Chancellor Valerius. Valerius, an Ethel whose species had long ago shed their physical forms for bodies of pure, controlled energy, pulsed with a calm, righteous light. He was the voice of the assembly, the embodiment of its 10,000-year-old traditions. The motion regarding human expansion has passed, Valerius announced, his voice a series of perfectly modulated, telepathic tones that echoed in every mind. By a vote of 178 to 22, the Assembly has determined that humanity's unchecked expansion beyond the Sol system poses an unacceptable risk to galactic stability. Thorn's face showed no emotion. He had seen this coming for weeks. He had sent the coded warnings back to Earth. The simulations had all predicted this outcome with a 97.3% probability. Effective immediately, Valerius continued, his mental voice laced with the cold finality of a judge passing sentence. All human colony ships must return to Sol space. No new human settlements will be approved by this body. Existing human outposts beyond the Sol system, including the research station on Kepler 186f and the mining operations in the Pleiades cluster, will have 5 standard years to relocate all personnel and assets. A small, almost inaudible gasp came from the toned delegate, a silicon-based life form whose people had benefited greatly from human trade. The restriction was more severe than most had anticipated. Even the anti-human factions, led by the imperious Valerius and the militaristic Thar, seemed surprised by the harshness of the final ruling. It was not a containment. It was a caging. Thorn stood up slowly. A ripple of anticipation went through the chamber. The silence was absolute. Everyone expected an angry speech, a passionate plea, a threat. Humans were known for their volatile, emotional responses. It was one of the many reasons the older species found them so distasteful. The delegation of Earth acknowledges the Assembly's decision, Thorn said, his voice calm, even, and utterly devoid of the expected passion. We will comply with the return order. He gathered his single, slim datapad and nodded almost imperceptibly to his 2 aides sitting behind him. They rose in perfect, silent unison. Ambassador Thorn? Valerius called out, his telepathic tone revealing a flicker of surprise at the human's calm, almost serene acceptance. Would you like to make a statement for the record? The floor is yours to contest the ruling, as is your right. Thorn paused at the chamber door and looked back, his gaze sweeping over the assembly of ancient, powerful beings who had just clipped his species' wings. No, High Chancellor, he said simply. Why? Earth has nothing further to add at this time. He turned and walked out, his aides following, their footsteps echoing in the vast, suddenly confused silence. As the great doors hissed shut behind the human delegation, an excited chatter filled the chamber. Most species viewed this as a necessary, if unpleasant, victory. Humans had advanced too quickly. They had built too much. They had learned too fast. In just 75 years, a blink of an eye in galactic time, they had established a dozen colonies, terraformed 3 worlds, and integrated their adaptive technology with countless alien systems. Their relentless drive, their chaotic creativity, their utter refusal to accept the words "it can't be done," many of the older, more stagnant species found it deeply, profoundly threatening. "They took that well," said Counselor Vrax, a reptilian being whose scaled skin gleamed under the lights. "Remarkably well. I expected more resistance. More of their typical emotional outbursts." "Too well," muttered Emissary Kale, the Corvin delegate. A veteran diplomat who had spent 20 of his years on Earth, he knew humans better than most aliens in the galaxy. That quiet acceptance, it worried him more than any shouting match ever could. Vrax laughed, a dry, hissing sound. "Why, Emissary? They are retreating. They are going back to their quiet corner of space to reflect on their youthful arrogance. This solves the human problem." Kale's avian features were grim, his feathered crest drooping. "In my time studying the humans, I learned they have an old saying. Beware the fury of a patient man. They're calm. It concerns me far more than their anger ever would. They are not a species that accepts being caged." "Nonsense." High Chancellor Valerius's voice cut through the chamber, ending the discussion. "The problem is solved. The balance is restored. Now, we move to the next order of business, the reallocation of the now vacant Kepler 186F system." 3 weeks later, Ambassador Thorne stood before the United Earth Government Council in the historic city of Geneva. The chamber was nothing like the Grand Assembly Room on Ethel. It was practical, almost Spartan, with simple wooden walls and modest seating for the 50 representatives of Earth's unified nations. There was no ceremony here, only work. And so, Thorne concluded his detailed report. "We have been effectively confined to our solar system. All colonies must be abandoned within 5 standard years. All Terran assets outside Sol are to be liquidated or abandoned." President Eva Morales, a woman with silver hair and eyes that held the calm resolve of someone who had faced down crisis after crisis, nodded slowly. Unlike the Galactic Assembly's reaction, no one in the Earth chamber seemed surprised or outraged. They looked grimly determined. "Thank you, Ambassador," Morales said, her voice steady. "You performed your duties with honor. General Thorne, your assessment." A tall, powerfully built woman in a dark blue military uniform stood up. It was General Marcus Thorne, Eris's own brother. "The withdrawal is already 15% complete, Madam President. Colony ships are returning on schedule from the outer settlements. We estimate full compliance with the Assembly's decree within 3 standard years, well ahead of their arbitrary deadline." "And Operation Silent Running?" Morales asked, her gaze intense. "Proceeding according to plan," the general replied, a grim smile touching his lips. "Phase 1, the recall of all non-essential personnel and mobile assets, is complete. Phase 2, the systematic shutdown of all integrated human support systems across the galaxy, begins next month. The effect should become noticeable shortly thereafter." Morales turned to a thin man with wild, white hair and glasses perched on his nose. "Dr. Kaminsky, the architect of humanity's most secret projects." "Doctor, status of the Omega projects?" Dr. Kaminsky adjusted his glasses, his eyes gleaming with intellectual fire. "All 17 Omega projects have been successfully moved to secure deep space facilities within the Sol system. The Assembly's decree has actually been a blessing, Madam President. My teams report we can work far more efficiently without having to constantly hide our advancements from their prying observers." "And the quantum shield?" Morales pressed. 93% operational, Kaminsky answered. "Full, impenetrable coverage of Earth and Mars within 2 months. The entire Sol system will be under the shield within 6. Once active, nothing gets in or out without our express permission. And I do mean nothing." Morales nodded, satisfied. She turned to face the entire Assembly. "For 75 years, we have played by their rules. We joined their assembly. We respected their traditions. We limited our growth. We shared some of our technologies while carefully, prudently, hiding our most significant breakthroughs. We fought in their border conflicts. We healed their plagues. We helped feed their starving colonies. The room remained silent, every representative hanging on her words. And in return, they grew more fearful of us with each passing year. They saw our help not as a gift, but as a threat. They saw our progress not as a contribution, but as a challenge to their ancient, stagnant order. Her voice grew hard as steel. Today, we enact the Solitude Protocol. We will withdraw, not just our people, but our influence. Completely. Every human business, every human doctor, every human engineer, every human ship will return home. We will leave them to their precious, fragile stability. We will give them exactly what they asked for, a galaxy without human interference. What of our allies? Asked a counselor from the Africa Union. The Tones, the Corvins, not all species supported this ban. They had their chance to stand with us in the Assembly and defy the High Council. Morales replied coldly. Those who did, like the Corvins, will be given private, secure channels of communication. They will not be abandoned. The rest will learn, firsthand, what our absence truly means. On the desert world of Proximus 4, Dr. Lena Petrova packed the last of her advanced medical supplies. Around her, the clinic was filled with the planet's native species, the Kra'TH, insectoid beings whose lives she had worked to save for the past decade. You cannot leave, doctor, begged Craigs, a local elder whose life she had saved from a complex neurological parasite. The nearest qualified xenobiologist is 3 star systems away. Our people will die. Assembly orders, Craigs, Petrova said simply, her voice tight with a sorrow she tried to hide. All humans must return to the Sol system. But this hospital, it treats 2,000 patients a day. You built it. You trained us. Petrova sealed the last crate. I've trained your assistants as best I could. The Assembly has 5 years to find qualified replacements for all human medical personnel across the galaxy. I am sure they have a plan. She knew they didn't. We voted against the ban, Craig said, his mandibles clicking with desperation. Our representative. He argued for you. Petrova's professional expression softened. She looked at the old alien, her friend. I know, Craigs. I know. She discreetly handed him a small, encrypted data chip. That's why I'm leaving you my private research notes and the synthesis codes for 3 years' worth of medications. Hide it. Use it wisely. Other worlds will not be so fortunate. In the Galactic Assembly's central archives, a repository of knowledge stretching back 1,000,000 years, Emissary Kale found the High Chancellor's chief librarian, Zoltek, studying a historical display. Still worried about the humans, Emissary? Zoltek asked, his gaseous form swirling with amusement. Kale pointed to the display, which showed grainy images of humanity's first contact with the Assembly 75 years ago. Did you know that before joining us, they fought 3 global, planet-spanning wars among themselves? In the last one, they used fission weapons and nearly destroyed their entire civilization. All the more reason to contain them, Zoltek said dismissively. You misunderstand, Kale replied, his voice a low, worried chirp. After that war, after that near extinction, they rebuilt their entire world in just 50 years. They went from primitive fission weapons to faster-than-light travel in less than a century. No other species in recorded history has ever advanced so quickly after a major cataclysm. What is your point, Emissary? My point, Kale said, turning to face the librarian, his avian eyes dark with foreboding, is that humans are a species defined not by their successes, but by how they respond to challenges. We haven't contained them. We haven't caged them. We have challenged them. We have unified them against a common obstacle. And history shows that a unified, challenged humanity is. He trailed off, his feathered crest drooping. Is what? Zoltek pressed, a flicker of unease disturbing his calm. Is unstoppable, Kale whispered. 1 month after the decree, the first reports came in. A farming colony in the Centauri sector reported catastrophic crop failures. The specialized, genetically modified wheat strain developed by human agronomists had needed regular, subtle genetic adjustments to remain viable in the alien soil. The human team was gone. The crops died. 2 months after, 3 major interstellar shipping companies declared bankruptcy. Their hyper-efficient navigation systems, which had been designed, updated, and maintained by human technicians, had begun failing without their constant, predictive updates. Dozens of ships were lost. 3 months after, The first hospital closed on Riel Prime. Without human doctors and their specialized, adaptive surgical techniques, certain complex, multi-species neurosurgeries became impossible to perform. The patients were put into cryostasis, a silent, frozen testament to the Assembly's folly. In a small, private chamber off the main Assembly Hall, High Chancellor Valerius met with 5 of his senior counselors. "These situations are concerning," he admitted, his energy form a troubled violet. "But they are temporary. We will adapt. We always have." "Adapt?" sputtered Vrax, the reptilian counselor. "Valerius, do you have any idea how many of our core systems relied on human maintenance? How many of our ships used human-designed focusing crystals in their drive cores? We didn't even know until they were recalled for patent violations. We managed perfectly well before they joined us," Valerius countered, his form flaring with irritation. "And we grew complacent and dependent on them after they arrived," said another counselor, a being of living metal. "The humans were clever. They made themselves essential without ever making it obvious. They were parasites." Emissary Kale, who had been invited due to his unwelcome expertise on humans, spoke softly. "They were not parasites. They are problem solvers. It is their nature. They see inefficiency, and they fix it. They encounter an obstacle, and they overcome it. They didn't make us dependent. We allowed ourselves to become dependent because their solutions were always better, faster, more efficient. And now?" Valerius asked, his mental voice sharp. "Now," said Kale, his gaze distant, "we are about to discover exactly how much we relied on a species we just voted to expel." Outside the chamber's great window, they watched as yet another human ship, a massive transport, quietly lifted from the spaceport, its navigation lights blinking a final goodbye. It was heading toward the distant, shrouded Sol system, taking with it resources, knowledge, and an irreplaceable ingenuity the Assembly was only just beginning to realize it couldn't afford to lose. A year had passed since the Assembly's decree. The galaxy was changing. What had begun as isolated shortages and inconvenient system failures had metastasized into widespread, systemic instability. Admiral Krell of the Galactic Defense Force paced the bridge of his flagship, the Vindicator. Once, the sight of the massive vessel would have inspired awe in any who saw it. Now it felt hollow. Nearly a third of its secondary systems were offline due to a lack of compatible replacement parts. Its crew was reduced to a skeleton force. "Status of the Orion Border Patrol," he asked his second-in-command. 6 ships are operational out of a fleet of 20, Admiral," came the grim reply. "The rest are grounded. Maintenance issues. A lack of qualified technicians for the hybrid energy cores. Crew shortages." Krell's jaw tightened. "The Paxian pirates?" 3 more merchant vessels taken in the last week, the officer reported. "Reports suggest they have somehow acquired military-grade disruptor cannons. We don't know from where." Krell stared at the tactical display. Red warning icons blinked across previously secure regions, a spreading sickness on his map. "Humans made up only 15% of our force," he muttered to himself. "How did their absence create such a catastrophic gap?" "It wasn't just their numbers, Admiral," his officer explained softly. "They served in key specialist positions. Tactical analysis, unconventional warfare, special operations. And they were innovative in ways other species aren't." "Meaning?" Krell growled. "They improvised, sir. They found solutions that weren't in the manual. Without them, we are following standard, predictable protocols against enemies who are adapting and learning." A communications officer interrupted, his voice tense. "Admiral, emergency transmission from Outpost Sigma 9. They're under heavy attack by Paxian raiders. Deploy response Team Alpha." Krell ordered instantly. "Alpha Team is already responding to another attack in the Centauri sector, sir," the officer replied. "All other rapid response teams are committed elsewhere." Krell closed his eyes briefly, the weight of his failing fleet pressing down on him. "Tell Sigma 9 to hold out as long as possible. Help will come when it is available." As the officer relayed the message, Krell knew it was a death sentence. A year ago, a direct attack on a defended outpost would have been unthinkable. Now, it was becoming routine. On the commerce world of New Proxima, once the galaxy's largest and most vibrant trading hub, Finance Minister Lorix reviewed the latest economic projections with growing, cold alarm. Trade volume is down 62%, she told the Emergency Economic Council. The galactic credit has lost 40% of its value in the last 6 months alone. Currency values are fluctuating wildly across 17 major systems. We are on the verge of a full-scale depression. How is this possible? Asked a council member, a being of pure data. The humans were just one species among hundreds. Their GDP was less than 5% of the galactic total. They were a species that facilitated trade across incompatible economies. Lorix explained, her voice heavy with exhaustion. Their banking networks bridged different value systems. Their insurance companies underwrote risky but essential ventures into the outer territories. Their merchants found and created markets where no one else could. They were the grease in the machine. Surely we can replace these functions, another counselor suggested. Eventually? Yes, Lorix admitted. But their systems were integrated in ways we are still discovering. They didn't just build networks. They built redundancies and fail-safes into everything. As each one fails, we find 3 more critical dependencies we didn't know existed. It's a cascade failure, and we don't know how to stop it. The chamber fell silent as screens displayed collapsing market values and failing businesses. Deep in the assembly archives, Emissary Kale and the librarian Zoltek worked through ancient records, desperately searching for a historical precedent. Here, Kale said, pointing to a flickering historical file. The last time the Assembly faced a multi-sector crisis of this magnitude. The Halvarian conflict. Zoltek read the summary. Nearly 600 years ago. It took the Assembly decades to resolve and caused the collapse of the previous council structure. Thousands of worlds fell into darkness. History repeats itself, Kale observed grimly. This is different, Zoltek argued. The Halvarians were aggressive expansionists. The humans have simply left. Yet the effect is the same, Kale countered. The Assembly is fracturing along old fault lines. Without the humans mediating, old rivalries are resurfacing. As if to emphasize his point, their screens flashed with a breaking news alert. 2 previously allied species, the Geodes and the Lumina, had broken diplomatic relations over a dispute concerning resource rights in a failing star system. The doors to the archive burst open. A military officer rushed in, his face a mask of panic. Emissary, High Chancellor, urgent news from the Outer Rim, he announced, his voice cracking. A deep space monitoring post, it's gone silent. Then another. A patrol fleet sent to investigate, they vanished. We received one final, fragmented transmission. What did it say? Kale asked, a cold dread seizing him. The officer's voice dropped to a whisper. It wasn't a language, sir. It was just a sound. A chittering. A sound like a billion insects, all screaming at once. A shocked silence fell over the room. The Xeraxian hive, an ancient, dormant race of planet eaters. They had been silent for 3,000 years. Kale's feathers went flat against his skull. He remembered a report. A human deep space monitoring team. 2 years ago, they had detected faint, unusual energy readings from Xeraxian hibernation worlds. They had proposed a joint mission to investigate. The Assembly had rejected the proposal as an unnecessary and provocative waste of resources. They weren't trying to expand. Kale whispered to himself, the terrible truth crashing down on him. They weren't trying to threaten us. They were trying to protect us. The diplomatic vessel Harmonious Accord approached the edge of the Sol system with caution. High Chancellor Valerius stood on the bridge with Emissary Kale and a small, terrified delegation. For 3 days, they had been broadcasting a desperate plea for an audience. For 3 days, there had been only silence. No response, High Chancellor, the ship's captain reported. They're listening, Kale assured them. They're just deciding if they want to answer. The Xeraxian fleet has already consumed 2 outposts, Valerius said grimly. We don't have time for their games. Suddenly, an alert sounded. A small, sleek craft appeared before them, materializing from a ripple in space-time. It was a human vessel. A calm, female voice came over the comms. This is Commander Eva Rostova of the Earth Defense Force. Your vessel has entered restricted Terran space. State your purpose. Valerius stepped forward. Commander Rostova, I am High Chancellor Valerius of the Galactic Assembly. We come seeking an urgent audience with your government. A threat to all sentient life has emerged. The Xeraxian hive is awake. The response was cold and immediate. Transmit all data pertaining to this threat. If our government deems it worthy of discussion, you will receive coordinates for a meeting point. Comply or withdraw immediately. The transmission ended. Arrogant, sputtered one of the counselors. Cautious, Kale corrected. The last official communication they received from us was an order confining them to this system. Valerius nodded, his energy form dim with humiliation. Send the Zeraxian data. All of it. Hours passed. Then, Rostova's ship reappeared. Follow my vessel. Maintain your current speed. Any deviation will be considered a hostile act. They were led through the shimmering, powerful quantum shield. They passed massive, orbital defense platforms, each bristling with enough firepower to destroy a capital ship. They docked with a colossal space station in high Earth orbit. Unity Station. President Eva Morales sat at the head of a conference table, flanked by her military and scientific advisors. She looked at the humbled assembly delegation with cold, unforgiving eyes. High Chancellor, she greeted him. This is an unexpected visit. Madam President, Valerius began. We come seeking human assistance against the Zeraxian hive. Yes, Morales replied, her voice flat. We are aware of the Zeraxian emergence. Our deep space monitoring has been tracking their awakening for nearly 3 years now. 3 years? Valerius was startled. Your report to the Assembly was only 2 years ago. We spent a year gathering conclusive evidence before bringing it to you. General Thorne explained from beside the president. Evidence you dismissed as flawed. A mistake we deeply regret, Valerius admitted. One of many, it seems. What exactly are you requesting? Morales asked. Military aid, Valerius said simply. The Zeraxian fleet will reach our core worlds in 60 days. Our defense force, it is crippled. Unprepared. Unprepared, Morales echoed, the words dripping with ice. A curious turn of phrase. Perhaps crippled by our absence would be more accurate. Valerius flinched but nodded. Yes, without human ships, crews, and technological support, our defenses are inadequate. You confined us to this system, General Thorne reminded him. Ordered our colonies abandoned. And now that a monster you refuse to believe in is at your door, you want us to leave Sol to come and fight your war. It is not our war. Kale interjected desperately. It is everyone's war. The Zeraxians see all intelligent organic life as either a threat or food. They will not distinguish between assembly species and humans. A long, heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, Morales spoke. We will consider your request. You will be given quarters here on Unity Station. We will reconvene tomorrow with our decision. As the delegation was led away, General Thorne turned to his president. We're not actually considering this, are we? After everything they've done. Of coup. RSE we are, Marcus, Morales replied, her gaze fixed on the tactical display showing the approaching Zeraxian fleet. We have been preparing for the Zeraxian emergence since our first deep space listening posts detected it. The only question is what conditions we set for our help. The next morning, the Assembly delegation was shown into a much larger chamber, where the full, unified Earth government was assembled. High Chancellor, Morales began, her voice ringing with authority. We have reached a decision. Earth will commit its full military and scientific resources to defeating the Zeraxian threat. Visible, shuddering relief spread through the Assembly delegation. However, Morales continued, we have conditions. Of course, Valerius said quickly. Name them. First, the expansion ban is permanently and publicly revoked. All former human colonies will be returned, and the Assembly will fund their reconstruction. Valerius nodded. Agreed. Second, humanity will receive 5 permanent seats on the High Council, with full veto power over any and all military matters. This caused murmurs, but Valerius nodded again. Acceptable. Third, Morales continued. A new joint scientific and defense initiative will be established, with equal human and assembly leadership. There will be no more hiding research. There will be no more dismissing warnings. These terms are generous, Valerius acknowledged. There is one more condition, Morales said, her tone hardening. The Galactic Assembly will broadcast a formal, public acknowledgement that its treatment of humanity was based on unfounded fear and prejudice, rather than evidence, and that this prejudice directly endangered the entire galaxy by ignoring our warnings about the Zeraxians. Valerius hesitated. Such an admission of failure was unprecedented. It would shatter the Assembly's image of infallible wisdom. Kale leaned forward. "High Chancellor," he whispered, "this isn't about their pride. It is about establishing a new foundation of honesty. If we cannot admit our greatest mistake, how can we be trusted to help build a better future?" After a long, agonizing moment, Valerius nodded. "Very well. We will make this acknowledgement. Then we have an agreement," Morales said. "General Thorn will coordinate with your defense forces immediately. We have a war to win." 3 days later, aboard the massive human carrier UES Defiance, Admiral Krell of the Assembly Fleet watched in awe as human crews prepared for battle. The ship was 3 times the size of his largest vessel, and it hummed with technologies he couldn't begin to comprehend. "We've identified the Xeraxian command structure," General Thorn explained, pointing to a complex tactical display. "They operate as a hive mind, but it's not centralized. It's distributed across a series of control nodes. Take out enough nodes, and the swarm becomes disorganized, feral. Our previous encounters with them, centuries ago, suggested no such vulnerability," Krell noted. "That's because you were attacking their worker drones," Thorn replied. "We have been studying them since we first detected their activity. Our quantum sensors can distinguish the unique energy frequency of a control node ship from a simple warrior drone. And these weapons," Krell gestured to strange, pulsating devices being loaded onto smaller, faster strike craft. "Quantum disruption bombs," Thorn explained. "They don't cause a physical explosion. They target the unique quantum frequency of the Xeraxian hive mind itself. A weapon developed specifically for this threat. A weapon we offered to co-develop with you 2 years ago. You created weapons to fight an enemy we told you didn't exist," Krell said, his voice a whisper of awe and shame. Thorn smiled, a thin, grim expression. "We like to be prepared. The defense of humanity doesn't depend on whether the Assembly believes in a threat.